Scary Reviews welcomes you to Tuesday's Terrors, where we have casual conversations about what the horror community is watching. Pull up a chair, grab a drink, and join us for Tuesday's
All right, so
Terrors.
today,
Tonight, we are jumping in the deep end and going a little off of our normal script. This doesn't have to do anything with movies tonight. We're looking at horror in the written word. And Chris and I were talking about wanting to do this, have been talking about wanting to do this type of thing for a while, and thought that maybe a really good idea would be what story, novel, short story, whatever the case may be, scared you on your really scared you on your first reading. Chris, you chose to cover Stephen King's story. Which one did you choose?
Yes, I chose. We both actually chose from this collection of short stories, Skeleton Crew, originally pressed out in 1985 from Stephen King. I chose The Raft. My coverage of this is more through the eyes of nostalgia. Growing up, this story coming out, I was always big into what we've said before on our shows before, the Dean Koontz, Stephen King were big writers. I mean, we just covered The Shining, and here we are again. Now, what I will say is The Raft was brought to film in Creepshow 2.
Yes.
And it is probably the closest you'll ever get to exactly the written word brought to screen. Little
Until
change,
the end.
little change at the end. I think it's made it more dramatic for the film adaptation of
Yes.
that. But everything leading to it. I picked the story because I grew up in. I live in Northeast PA, so lake life, pond life, it's a thing. I grew up. There were summers where I think when I was like 15, I was happy. I went fishing every single day from May through September. I found a way to at least stop somewhere and throw something in the water and jig it a little bit and try to get a little fishing in. So lake life for me, friends with boats, friends without boats, friends with slips, friends with rafts out in the middle of a pond with a diving board on it. And this is where that story is about two very close friends in college, one the brainiac, one the jock, and two girls that they had at their house partying with.
Yes.
And decide they're going to head out. It is the end of the summer. It's an Indian summer, as they call it, where it's gone into October and they've had a warm period. And let's one last hurrah to end this summer. We're going to go out to this raft. It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
You turn off the main road. You go down through a bunch of summer people houses that are now closed up because it's October. I know this personally. There are sections around me that come October 1st, everything gets shut off.
Yep.
And that cabin is closed up until usually around April 1st, a 6-month period. So being out in the middle of nowhere, I could completely relate to that. And like I said, being playing on the especially the big lake here, um, uh, swimming was a thing all the way until the point where you couldn't. And we were dumb enough in October and November to be like, let's jump in the water and see if we can stop our hearts,
How long
and-
can you last? Not long.
exactly. And who's the bigger man here that can stay in the water? Stupid, like that. But this is where this is. So these friends decide jump in the car. They were drinking, they were partying it up. They got a doobie going back and forth, and they race out to the middle of nowhere to this pond. And just like the book and the movie are together, is they get there, they're going to swim out to this raft, they're going to watch the sun go down, and they're going to have a good time. And then that'll be it. So they've got the Camaro sitting on the shoreline. Um, the music's are the tunes are playing, and they swim out there. We have a moment of how cold it is.
If I remember correctly, and this may be a paraphrase, not an exact quote, but once he gets a beer or two in him, he can make that Camaro dance.
Right. Absolutely. And we have basically the jock, the brainiac, the shy girl, and the I guess fun girl.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way.
In
Um,
in parentheses, we're saying fun girl, right?
fun, right? She's easy on the eyes, kind
Yes.
of. You know, so and there's a big thing where both girls seem to be attracted to Deke, who would be the jock, the guy that's first in the water, gung ho out to the raft, and following behind him, Randy. They have a back and forth on Randy's poncho, and uh, Chico is Deke, and they play that back and forth.
Now, would you agree with me? It's been a while since I've read the draft, but if I remember correctly, wasn't did it feel like there was a little bit of like rivalry, not necessarily rivalry, maybe a little bit of jealousy between
A little bit. Randy, the story is told from Randy's point of view.
Mhm.
That he looks at Deke because he knows he's the popular guy. He knows he brings all the girls and he's got all the right things. But he also, knows that if he likes a girl, he doesn't want to bring her near Deke, because this is what happens. They all go off, and he's got a thing for Rachel, or Laverne, but she's the fun girl. She wants to be with the jock.
Right.
And there's Rachel, which, maybe he could hook up with her, but she kind of wants to be with the jock too. And they all start swimming out to this raft. Now, of course, Deke gets there first, and as Randy's swimming out, he notices what seems to be almost like an oil slick on top of the water moving around, and it seems to be coming towards them, and that's weird. By the time he gets to the raft, this thing has covered a huge portion of where it started to the
Yes.
raft, and it's going for the raft. So he's immediately saying, come on, hurry up to the girls, got to get on the board, rushing them. Everybody's like, what's wrong with you? What, are you still high? They can't figure out why he's doing the things that he's doing. And it's because he feels that this is unnatural and it's coming.
Yeah.
And
He kind of starts to realize at this point that this mass, right, is sentient. It's chasing them at this
Yeah.
point.
And he says, it didn't come out here until we were out here. And that's what he got from it. And we get the girls up on the raft just in the nick of time as this thing comes around the raft, but now it's not going anywhere. Now it's staying here. And our first victim, Rachel, decides to look at it, and it's pushing out these beautiful colors, these swirls of colors that she gets lost in. And before you know it, she dips her finger into it, and it grabs a hold of her and rides her arm up and immediately starts dissolving her to where she's screaming in horror how much it hurts. It pulls her into the water. Randy goes to try to help, and Deke says, no, look, it's killing her. Like, it
There's nothing you can do.
immediately dissolving skin. You can hear bones cracking. It takes her into the water. She flops around for a bit until she disappears.
Yes.
And now they don't know what the hell's going on. Now they know this is something strange. And it's only the three of them left on this raft. And they're trying to figure out, can we beat them? Can we get away? And as they're trying to figure out if they can swim away, this thing has found its way under the raft. Now, being in the lake, swimming with these rafts, all kinds of stuff happens under these things. It is, it's got its own ecosystem underneath there. I don't know how many times I've been underneath playing around them. You've got fish to come up and tap your legs, the little sunfish and the bluegills and such that touch you. You've got stuff that usually grows around the chains that anchor it there. So creepy.
And I will tell you right now, it doesn't matter if you know they're there or not. When a fish comes up and taps your leg or brushes your foot or whatever the case may be, it will freak you out. And I think
I've swam in these rivers with northern pike where they're big fish. Now they've got nasty teeth and stuff. Have I ever been afraid that the thing's going to bite my leg off? Not really. Maybe once in a blue moon. But I've swam with fish that were, whoa, I would love to catch that because it's a prize fish, and it rubbed up against me as we swam past each other. So totally relatable. This thing has found a way under the raft, and as Deke is trying to explain he can outrun it, he starts screaming my foot. this thing has found a way to not only get under the raft, but come up through between the boards and is now starting to dissolve his foot from
Yes.
the bottom. Um, Eventually, now this is where the book differs a little bit from the film version, the short film, where now now Deke is dissolved over a course of some time. It slowly gets to his foot, snapping bones and dissolving him while sucking along. And this thing comes through all of the cracks like a heartbeat. And it's just Randy and Laverne left. Laverne, who is, you know, uh, freaking out, is jumped into Randy's arms. He's trying to hold her while standing in between boards and not getting eaten by this thing.
Now, isn't it true? Because I can't remember which one it is. You can tell me. That in the book, didn't it latch onto his foot and then literally like pull him between the boards? And it
Yes,
popped him.
and right where, and it was slowly to where at one point they said that there was blood and such coming out of his mouth and eyes like a faucet covering them in gore.
Right, because
Um,
it was literally it was squeezing him to an inch or two.
Eventually, it brought him all through the cracks between the boards, right to the very end where he couldn't figure out what the snapping was, and it was the ribs popping as they went through the boards.
Yeah,
And
horrible.
he watches this whole thing, and again thinking maybe we should have escaped while it was eating him. It might have been occupied enough. Maybe Laverne would have made it, but at this point, I don't really care.
Yeah, and
Um,
and it's also a really good Stephen King ism that every time this mass, this blobbish oil slick thing, whatever it is,
mhm,
eats, it gets bigger.
right.
Right. So that's a
Started
really
off as a
nice touch.
5-foot circle, and now it became an 8-foot circle. Now, so going by those routes, it's probably somewhere around between 12 and 15 feet now
Hmm.
of this mass. And here's where we go into the story is better is when you look into this thing, the colors swirl. And you start thinking about happy summer moments and happy summer times. And oh my God, stop looking at it. It's mesmerizing you. So not
Almost a
only is it
hypnotic type
sentient,
thing.
yes, it's baiting you into touching it. And we spend the entire night of taking turns back and forth on who watches to see if people are around where this thing is. Every now and then it comes to the raft. Um, but they take turns to where they both end up kind of falling asleep together. And uh he has a moment where he's kind of undressing Laverne, and they're having this moment to her hair hit the water, and this thing started pulling her hair in and started eating her. And
So there's a lot of people um who have stated over the years that they didn't believe this part, right? They did not
mhm,
believe that these two would be making love, having sex, however you want to point it, when they just watched their friends get pulled away. But there's actually a scientific backing behind this that when two people are in a situation where it is completely dire, the only one of the things that they long for the most is intimacy with another person. It is the feeling of being loved, the feeling of comfort. And so once you understand that, then you kind of understand why that part of the story exists. Because if not, you look at it and go, there's no way, right? I just
it's
saw
that
my best
moment
friend
of
get pulled through a 2-inch spot and pop him like a grape.
not
But
touching a booby. Is that real?
yeah.
um, and it is. It's bonded by trauma. It happens in war with soldiers. It happens when something is very intimate itself. When you experience trauma at that level,
Hmm.
watching your friends dissolved in front of you, with nothing you can do to help, that you're not in quite a reality anymore. Your brain is putting up defenses in order to keep you from losing your sanity. And one of those things is to reach out to someone for help. And that intimacy
Yes.
is a comfort. It's your brain saying, at least you have this,
Right.
in order to keep you at least somewhat grounded and not go Pearl on somebody.
As we just covered Pearl last
Right.
last Thursday. So yeah, if you get a chance, that's a really fun video. So
Right.
so the creature, which it has no name,
Yeah.
uh, grabs a hold of her by her hair, basically, as you had said, started eating her face.
Yep.
And
Nothing
then
he can do. And once again, the moment of should I have tried to escape while this was happening comes and goes. And this is where the ending in the show, great up to this point, really captured what we were writing about.
Mhm.
The show goes on to him taking this moment to escape and getting on shore and being like, hi, and the thing just kind of going, oh yeah, well, I'm a wave and I got you, and snatching him into the
which
water.
was a
He loses.
great visual for the
Absolutely.
movie. You know, him
For
standing there.
the shorts and yeah,
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get it.
definitely. Definitely. The book, however, is even more dire. This now it's October. We're chilly at night. These guys dropped everything but their skivvies and swam out to this raft. They've already spent the night. They showed up at dusk. Originally, all four of them. Now we've gone through the night. They've slept. This was the morning that it took a Laverne from him, and Randy spends the next couple nights
Standing because he can't
standing
because he can't
because
sit
the
down.
thing has realized that when he sits down, he would be vulnerable. So every time he sat, the thing would come to him, to the point where he is now thinking, I wish I brought a gun. I wish I could kill myself
Mhm.
because I don't want this. And after a few nights, he realizes, you know what? Maybe that's why the swirls are the way they are. Maybe that's its gift to make this painless, is for me to get lost into it. And he's basically like, hey, and starts singing, uh, you know, school's out. I, like, don't need no teachers anymore. Uh, let's go. The Ramones are playing in his head. He is checked out. Come get me, because I obviously I'm not going to get away. I don't want it to be painful. Um, come get me. Show me your deadlights.
In the last thing he says, he actually speaks to the creature.
Mhm.
It says, "Do you love?"
Do you love?
Wow.
Yeah.
So deep.
Yeah. And the creep factor behind this, and once again, I wasn't too long after I read this that I saw Creep Show too, late 80s. And it was also the time that I moved to this area and began the lake life. To see stuff out on the lake that's weird, like the seaweeds that kind of mass up and float along, some of the algae blooms that kind of happen, and having this story in the back of my head is well, it's always been back there.
I'm
Like,
sure. I'm
not
sure.
be the first one to poke the weird stuff floating in the water, and if somebody is planning on poking it, being on the opposite side, ready to go.
Yeah. Use a stick. Don't use your finger.
No, it's the same thing. Poking things with sticks isn't safe either, but at least you might have a second to snatch your hand back.
Exactly. You can let go, hopefully.
Right. Hopefully. So yeah, this was one of my favorite stories, especially in Skeleton Crew. Some great stories in there, and some great film worthy stories in there as well.
I agree.
But yeah, this was one that when you mentioned which one sticks out to you in this, it was like that. That was me. I was 9, 10-year-old me going, like, I'm living this. I don't want that to happen. Like, oh, you have a raft in your lake.
Yeah. Yeah. Go have fun.
Okay,
I'll be over here watching.
let's go out to it.
I tell you what, you
So,
guys go out there. I'm gonna hang out here for a few minutes. As long as everything's cool, I'll be out in a
right.
minute.
See what happens.
Because
Right.
one of two things is gonna happen, right? Or three things, right? Everything's gonna be fine, beautiful. There's gonna be a
Right.
black gooey mass coming after you, or there's zombievers now to worry about.
Right. Right. Again, been around fishing rivers and stuff and seeing them beavers. They are scary at night. They have a tendency to show up in the water, and when they see you and you can't see them, they slap their tail on the water. So it's a calm as everything night, and then you just hear a crack like 15 feet away from you in the water, and you're like,
What the fuck? What the
yeah,
what the fuck? Who the
what's
fuck?
going on? And you look for the toxic waste. That's the first thing you do. You gotta look for that toxic waste.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that, Chris. That's
yeah.
a fantastic story. I love the fact that you were able to kind of tie it back to your childhood. Mine is not necessarily something that's tied back to my childhood as much as it is. I just remember exactly where I was and how I reacted to the end of the story. Your
Mhm.
story is about impending doom. It's about
Yes.
it literally is about a group of people who know that they're at first anyway that they're surprised by it, but by the end, the people that are there know that this thing's there and they know they can't escape and the horror that's involved in it. My story, on the other hand, is a cautionary story of overactive curiosity.
Mm.
My story is a story where the horror jumps up and surprises you, and you don't have any clue it's there, clue that it is going to affect you or affect your the people of your story. My
Right.
story that I wanted to cover is called The Jaunt. The Jaunt is
Good job.
a another Skeleton Crew story. It was actually um, originally released in 1981 in the um, Twilight Zone magazine,
Right.
and then was released as part of the compilation of Skeleton Crew. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to address mine just a little different. I am going to, just like you did. I'm going to take you through the story, but I want to kind of give you highlights of the story and that we can talk about along the way, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, the Jaunt. Our story starts with what is basically an equivalent of an airport. The family of four, the husband Mark, wife Marilys, daughter Patty, and son Ricky, they're moving to Mars. Okay.
Sure.
Mark's work has transferred him to the red planet, and instead of leaving his family behind for 2 years, they decide that they're going to go together. The
Right.
only way to travel to Mars or any other planet is by teleportation, or as it's now called, the jaunt. Mark
Good
has
job.
traveled the jaunt many times before, but his family has not. So, in order to calm their nerves, Mark decides to tell them all the history of the jaunt, thinking it might calm them down.
Right.
So, the year is now 2300. Sometime in the distant past, energy resources have run out, but it has been discovered that there is hundreds of thousands of years worth of oil on other planets, which is why Victor Haroon is so important. He invented a thing called the jaunt. The
Right.
jaunt is basically him. He's working in his barn. He's been trying to develop a way to use particle transmission. Unaware one day, as he was working, that he mistakenly flipped the machine with his hip and turned the transporter on by accident.
Right.
Uh, while working, Victor felt an electrical type tingle in his hand. So when he looked, he found that he had teleported the first two fingers of his left hand across the barn 50 yards away from where he was currently
Right.
standing. Now, I don't know
No
about you.
longer connected.
I don't know about you, but okay. So take it from someone who's lost a finger in an industrial accident, or at least part of a finger. And I would have freaked the flip out if I was standing here and I looked 50 yards in that direction and saw my other two fingers on that side of the room.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
This isn't good.
no, not at
This
all.
isn't good at all.
but but this is what he was striving for, right? Because the reason being is that at first it was to get energy, it was to get oil off these planets, but then because of everything that was going on and all the waste that was involved and the lack of power resources, now all of a sudden we here on Earth were needing water. So he was going to Mars as a way for his company to help them take off parts of the ice caps and send them back. So the number one export from Mars was water.
Water.
Okay. So this is how it started, right? He's here. His fingers are now 50 yards away. He pulls his hand out. First thing he does, why does Stephen King do this in his books? First thing he does is he puts his fingers in his mouth.
Right.
You think he would learn not to do that from an asteroid, but we'll talk about that movie at some other time.
Yeah. You know.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
that's how it started, right? And then
Right.
he sent a pencil through and some keys and his wristwatch. Everything went through with no issues. Everything was great.
Yeah.
Until the mice.
Right. We found that all inorganic matter has no problem
Right.
being sent through this teleportation process. Perfect one side to the other. However, organic things.
Organic material has an issue. The mice definitely showed that there was a problem. So what he did at this point is he basically went to a pet store, bought up a couple mice, brought them back, and he was trying to put them through. If he held them by the head and went tail first, right, he could go all the way through to their head, pull them out, everything went fine, no issues, no problems whatsoever. But if he turned
Right.
them around and put them through head first, they would come out the other side, good, healthy, fun. I'm a mouse. I'm having a mousy fun. I go through the jaunt. I'm instantaneously from this spot to that spot. And as soon as I come through the other side, I have glossed eyes. My hair's frayed. I feel like I'm full of sawdust instead of muscle, and I'm dead. Bam, just like
Right.
that.
Right.
So what he did though is he experimented with this for a while, and he decided to put his goldfish through, which I thought was a kind of a neat idea because one of his
Right.
goldfish was swimming around like it's supposed to, and the other one was laying dormant. So he put it through. The one that was swimming around like it was supposed to had the same reaction as the mice and died. The one who was
Right.
dormant just started swimming without any issues. So what he found out was that animals who were unconscious were
Right.
not subject to what is known as the organic effect. So he very simply started just drugging the mice, passed them through.
Right.
The mice that went through asleep that were drugged had zero issues. Not only
Right.
did they have no issues, they had no issues ever. Their babies were fine. Everything was fine. Years later, everything was fine. So you would think, hey, this is great. Um, the problem that our hero has at this point in time is that Ricky, his 12-year-old son, he is extremely curious, and he's been interrupting him through the whole thing to ask
The whole
questions.
time.
But the one question that he has is the biggie. Comes right here where he says, "Dad, when did they start with people? Tell us
Right.
that part."
Right.
So the dad knows that this is a cautionary story. He has to be careful because he's trying to calm his family down. None of
Calm
them
his family and also explain to him the proper process on why we do the things we do.
exactly, which dads do this stuff all the time, right? He just happens to
Absolutely.
be talking about this. So the first humans that were jaunted, you would think they would be like astronauts or test pilots, but what they
Right.
did was they actually got convicts to volunteer, which I
Right.
thought that was a pretty neat solution. Hey, we'll give you so much time off of your sentence if you allow us to do this. And they all went through asleep, and they all had no issues. But
Right.
the government was involved, and as you know, they never do things exactly as they should. So
No.
they decided to put someone through awake to find out what was going on the
Yeah. Why?
inside.
Yeah. Why is this happening?
Why is this happening? Where if what and I think the purpose on that was, hey, let's find out why they're coming through the other side the way they are if they're awake, and that will allow us to maybe figure out a permanent solution other than just
Right.
drugging people. So they
Right.
got this guy. His name is Foggia,
Oji.
Foggia,
Yep.
right? He understood that Florida is in no way to be a state that you want to mess around with. They mean business when it comes to the death penalty. and his lawyer
Death
had told
row.
him, "Hey, it's all probability that you're next to ride Old Sparky." You all know
Right.
the Green Mile. You know who Old Sparky is, right?
Absolutely.
So, so he says, hey, they're going to put me in the electric chair. So if I don't do this, I'm going to die. I could
Right.
go through it and I could die like everything else that goes through a wake. What's the difference? 6 and 1, half a dozen the other. Or
Yeah.
I can go through and everything's cool and I get out scot free. They're going to let me go. They're going to expunge my
Full
record.
part. Yep.
A murderer goes free.
Right.
So he says, sure, let's do it. So he goes through the jaunt machine. So he goes through the portal here. 2 miles down the road, he comes out instantaneously, literally 0.000000671 of a second. I
Yep.
mean, there's no difference, right?
Yep.
His hair is turned snow white. His face hasn't changed. He doesn't have like lines and wrinkles and that kind of stuff, but you can really tell that for some reason he just looks very aged. An incredible age, it's written. He shuffled out with of the portal. His eyes were bulging. His mouth was twitching. His hands splayed out in front of him. He began to drool, and he had time to answer one question. They said, "What's it like?" And he says, right before he is right before he dies of a massive heart attack, he states, "It's an eternity in there."
Right.
So from point A to point B instantaneously, but the mind thinks that it's forever. So let's stop here and talk about this for just a second, Chris.
This is an important part in this whole story
Really
that because he spares his families the fact that there were other people
Yes.
that they sent through.
And he didn't tell them about this guy, right? He's not going to tell them about the guy who
no, there's 30 people that went through this to finally come to that moment of it's instantaneous to us, but when you're in there, it's very long time. It's an eternity.
So you shared your reason for the raft being so horrifying to you in the long run. I'm gonna let you in on my psyche. I was the youngest of 6, and there were many, many, many times in a house full of people that I felt utterly alone. Okay, this was just me growing up. This is how I felt. Something my wife is about the only person I talk to about it. So welcome to the therapy session, everybody.
Right.
So my greatest fear has always been to be alone. Now, when I say alone, I don't mean my wife's went out of town with friends or family for the weekend, and I mean about not having someone to be to share my love with and to be loved by. Right. That's a horrible has always been a horrible fear of mine. So imagine what it's like for me as I'm reading this. And the fear factor here is that your conscious being stays awake, but it has no sight, no sound, no taste, no smell, and no feel. Right? All your 5 senses
You're
are
just
gone.
aware of time.
It's your mind with itself for what feels like an eternity. Imagine, if you will, how long it would take you, because let's face it, we're human beings. Human beings are really whacked out animals inside their own mind. How long would it take for your mind to shut down? Would it take a day? Would it take a week? Would it take a year? Imagine what it would be like if you were in there for what felt like eon with nothing but your own thoughts and no other input whatsoever. That's
hopefully it takes longer than a day, a week, or whatever to get to that breaking point, because you're gonna be here a while.
Yeah, and so once you come back to reality where everything floods back into, your mind just collapses in on itself because it can't handle it.
Oh yeah, it would be a sensory overload.
Exactly.
You know,
so let's go back to Mark and you know, he sees that his time's running out. He starts talking to his family about this, and he's seeing around him that everyone's taking the gas mask. So what they do is they give the gas mask on, take a deep breath,
Hmm.
you immediately fall asleep. And Mark tells his family, he says, "Hey, listen, I'll be the first to go. I've done this
Right.
many times. Um, I'll be on the other side waiting for you. I'll be there to greet you. This is all great." So they give his family watches as he takes the mask, takes the breath, and they put him through the portal.
Right.
The first thing that Mark starts to realize is that he sees the Martian sky, and as he's waking up, the sounds of screaming in the area that he's in, and finds out that it's Meryl's scream. It's his wife's scream. She's pointing at Ricky right before she passes out. So,
Right.
ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take a moment to read this final section to you.
Yes.
If you have not read this story before and you don't want to be spoiled, please fast forward about a minute from this time. If not, please stay with me. I would love for you to share this moment with me, but be warned, this is not for the weak of heart at all. So, this is how it ends. Besides Ricky, his sister still mercifully slept. The thing had been his son, bounced and writhed on its jaunt couch. 12-year-old boy with snow white fall of hair, eyes which were incredibly ancient, corneas gone, sickly yellow, and there was a creature as old as time masquerading as a young boy, and yet it bounced and writhed with a kind of horrid, obscene glee, and at its choked lunatic cackles, the jaunt attendants drew back in terror. Some of them fled, although they had been trained to cope just such an unthinkable eventuality. The old young legs twitched. They quivered. Clawed hands beat and twisted and danced on the air. Abruptly, they descended, and the thing that had been his son began to claw at its face. Longer than you think, Daddy, it cackled. Longer than you think. I held my breath. When they gave me the gas, I wanted to see. I saw. Longer than you think. Cackling and screeching, the thing on the jaunt couch suddenly clawed its own eyes out, blood gouted, and recovery room was in an aviary of screaming voices now. Longer than you think, Dad. I saw. Long jaunt. Longer than you think. It said other things before the jaunt attendants were finally able to bear it away, rolling its couch swiftly away as it screamed and clawed at its eyes that had seen the unseeable forever and ever. It said other things, and then it began to scream, but Mark Oates didn't hear it because by then he was screaming himself.
Ooh.
This was a point for me reading this the first time as 17-year-old Alan with all those insecurities that I grew up with, that
Yeah.
I literally threw the book and sat there. And have you ever had that moment where you get chills so deep that it quakes your whole body?
Oh yeah.
I had one of those. I threw that book and I was
Right.
like, no, it can't be like that. It can't be like that. And I'm gonna tell you right now that to this day, even prepping for this show, when I reread this again, listened to it, listened to Stephen King talking about it, other things, it still it still gives me chills.
Right.
Yeah, it's a powerful. And
Right.
yes, go ahead.
To be left with one's own thoughts for an eternity. Uh, whew,
It's scary. So it's funny because
some
I
heavy.
I love the fact that we both picked stories that are exact opposites as to why they affected us, right? Yours
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
we see the impending danger, but we're stuck and we can't do anything
Yeah.
about it. Mine was
Right.
there's an impending danger, but you don't know it's there.
Right. You
Yeah.
were warned about it
You
too.
were, yeah, and you were warned. So it's like it's really funny because in yours the tension builds through the fact that this blob, this mass, this oil slick is always
Hmm.
there. Mine is that it took you by surprise because this young boy who was the first to climb tree, the first to take care and had no fear in his life, was so curious about it. Had his dad told him in advance, "Hey, if this happens, this you will die because of this," because his dad lost that part over, right? He didn't want
Right.
to because he didn't want to scare them more,
Didn't want to scare him.
but it was like impending doom versus surprising. Man, I tell you,
Yeah.
when I
It's
read
good stuff.
that final section, I was just like, I had to read it tonight because I thought to myself, that was
Yeah.
the thing that scared me the most was
And it's
that
funny.
ending.
It's funny that I saw when I was bringing up everything for tonight's talk, that uh, there's some meaning behind the raft was that four friends learn the harsh lesson about the dangers of holding on to your past. And in the jaunt is the dangers of having nothing but your past to be with you.
Oh, I love it. Very
Pretty
well
cool.
said,
So
Chris.
it's they're complete opposites, but they kind of blend together in
Yep.
a way that a lot of the stories in Skeleton Crew do. They complement each other
Yes.
when you
Yes.
read through them. That there's underlying themes that are the same that are polar opposites, but they complement each other throughout the anthology.
Yeah.
But yeah, great time talking with you tonight. Tuesday Terrors, the written word in the genre of horror. Fun topic to be Stephen King being one of the top ones out there
Yep.
to introduce you to horror or to hold your hand the entire way.
If you like what you saw tonight, this is what Tuesday Terrors is all about. Just different things in horror that we enjoy. Please feel free to send us an email and let us know some topics that you're interested in. Maybe we can cover them on Tuesday's Terrors. Where would they find our email, Chris?
You can find our email as well as all of the links to our socials at bio.link/graverev. You can get links to our X, our TikTok, our YouTube, our Instagram, our Facebook, and an email to send us any messages you like, hopefully horror related. But if you are here, I would just ask if you could give a little like down there, hit the sub button if you haven't already. If you have already, leave a comment. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, what you're feeling for these two stories. Or is there a story in Skeleton Crew that you enjoyed more than these two?
Absolutely.
Do so. Share with your friends. We're getting close to that 250 mark. We'd like to see the channel grow and be able to reach out to more in the horror community. And don't forget to catch us on Thursday night for our live, where you can be part of the Talking Dead in our live chat, our Living Dead room, and join along in whatever we're covering on Thursdays. We try to let you know ahead of time. So before we review it, we view it, and you can view it with us.
Absolutely. So that being said, again, Chris, thank you so much. What a wonderful topic this has been, and so much fun tonight. I love the fact that
Definitely.
we approached it on two separate points of views. I love the fact that both of our stories kind of complemented each other. And as soon as I brought up stories that scared us, I knew that we were both going to pick something for Stephen King. I just knew we would. Um, that
Absolutely.
that being said,
Yep.
again, as Chris said, bio.link Grave Rev. Okay.
Yep.
Has all of our send us an email, let us know. And if not, definitely let us know in the comments. We're big boys. If you like it, great. If you don't, let us know that as well. So thumbs up, thumbs down, either way it goes, let us know because we're trying to get better for you. That being said, as we
Definitely.
always say here on our channel when we're signing off, ladies and gentlemen, until we see each other again, hopefully that means Thursday night. May all your nightmares be true. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a good night, guys.